Hello and welcome back to my channel. I have read 5 books this month and it will probably be 6 if I can finish this book by tomorrow, because I have to finish it by tomorrow because I have to take a quiz on it. But anyway, I'm going to talk about the 5 books that I read this month. I'm very excited about what this means for me for the year, although last year I started off the exact same way. I read 5 books in January and then fell off for the rest of the year. I do want to do monthly wrap-ups. I didn't have faith in myself to do it last year because I don't read, like sometimes I'll read a lot and then sometimes I'll read 1 book a month. But I decided that even if I read 1 book a month, I can talk about it. With that, let's get into the books that I read. So Emily Henry Beach read. This is actually a reread. 2 of my books this month were rereads. I want to do a video on Emily Henry, like sort of a deep dive kind of behind the author. I want to do that with a lot of the authors that I really enjoy and like. I wanted to not only focus on Emily Henry the author, but also her writing style and why I think she's such a great writer. And as you can see, I have tabs. I did some annotation focusing on like specifically her writing. Let me give you the synopsis of Beach Read if you don't know. A romance writer who no longer believes in love and a literary writer stuck in a rut engage in a summer-long challenge that may just upend everything they believe about happily ever afters. Augustus Everett is an acclaimed author of literary fiction. January Andrews writes best-selling romance. When she pens A Happily Ever After, he kills off his entire cast. They are polar opposites. In fact, shut up. They are polar opposites. In fact, the only thing they have in common is that for the next 3 months, they're living in neighboring beach houses, broke, I feel that, broke and bogged down with writer's block. Also feel that. I've had a writer's block for a while. Well, like a couple weeks. It's not fun. Until one hazy evening, one thing leads to another, and they strike a deal designed to force them out of their creative ruts. Augustus will spend the summer writing something happy, and January will pen the next great American novel. She'll take him on field trips worthy of any rom-com montage, and he'll take her to interview surviving members of a backwoods death cult, obviously. Everyone will finish a book and no one will fall in love. Really? Obviously not true. It's a romance book. This is Emily Henry's first foray into like rom-com type books, chick lit. I don't even know if that word is used anymore in 2024 now, but I'll talk about this more in the video that I've already started the script. I have to reread her other books. I'll talk about it more in the video that I plan on doing, but Emily Henry was previously a YA writer and she wrote primarily science fiction and fantasy. So this was her first foray into adult fiction and also focusing on real things, real people, without the magical realism, without the fantastical elements. Even though there's a romance, it is romance technically, it does feel more women's fiction, and I've seen a lot of people say this on like Reddit and stuff, and I think that I would agree with that. But either way, the romances they tend to be really, I like them and appreciate them. Obviously, I'm a big Emily Henry fan. So I read this book. The first book I read by Emily Henry was Book Lovers, and I read this one after it, and then I read People We Meet on Vacation. I believe that was the order. And Book Lovers I loved. That was highly recommended by a booktuber that I watch and respect, and I read that and I really liked it. And so when I moved on, you know, I was kind of like reading them like back to back, Emily Henry's books. And I don't know why, but when I first read this, I liked it. I wasn't the biggest fan of Gus, like as the love interest. I really liked Charlie from Book Lovers, but rereading this, I really liked Gus. I do think that rereads are really good and helpful sometimes. But yeah, upon the second reread, I really appreciated Gus a lot more. And January as a main character, at first I was kind of iffy on her. I really liked, what was her name? Was her name like Nora or something in Book Lovers? I think it is. If it's not, I don't know where I got that name from, but I'm pretty sure that's her name. But I really liked the characters and book lovers, so you know, I was kind of like comparing them, I guess. Apologies if the angle's all weird now. I had to go make dinner and I hurt myself, so it's nice. Anyway, where was I? I was talking about beach read. Emily Henry. This, I've seen people talk about how this is Emily Henry in general, in this genre of books that she's putting out now, like Happy Place, beach read book lovers, people we meet on vacation, that it's more women's fiction. And I agree. I am not like the romance aficionado, but I've read a few romance books, and I feel like because there's more being focused on, it's not just the romance, because there's like a look into other relationships. I had a lot of fun reading this. I really think that this is great. It is a great beach read, but I also, there's a whole story kind of like behind the name and the reason why it's called this, and the fact that they are on a beach. They are on a beach. Some people were like, they're not on a beach because they're by a lake. I don't think y'all know what a beach is. There is in fact a beach. It's sand up against water. It may not be an ocean, but it is a beach. Their houses are on Lake Michigan. So the next book I want to talk about is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. I think that the background noise, the music that you might have heard, I think that might be done now. So anyway, The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. It is a fantasy story. It is a series. It is the first book in the Winter Night trilogy. I wanted to read this because I wanted a winter read for winter time. I actually wanted to read it last year, but I got the book from the library and it was on hold for a while. I finally was able to read it. I really enjoyed this book. It was a 5-star read for me, but that could be because as soon as I finished it, I was like, amazing, period. Bam, 5 stars. I really liked it. I thought it was excellent. I'm going to read you the synopsis. So, at the edge of the Russian wilderness, winter lasts most of the year and the snowdrifts grow taller than houses. But Vasilisa doesn't mind. She spends the winter nights huddled around the embers of a fire with her beloved siblings, listening to her nurse's fairy tales. Above all, she loves the chilling story of Frost, the blue-eyed winter demon, who appears in the frigid night to claim unwary souls. Wise Russians fear him, her nurse says, and honor the spirits of house and yard and forest that protect their homes from evil. After Vasilisa's mother dies, we're going to call her Vasya because that's what people call her, and Vasilisa is hard for me to say. So after Vasya's mother dies, her father goes to Moscow and brings home a new wife. Fiercely devout, city-bred, Vasya's new stepmother forbids her family from honoring the household spirits. The family acquiesces, but Vasya is frightened, sensing that more hinges upon their rituals than anyone knows. And indeed, crops begin to fail, evil creatures of the forest creep nearer, and misfortune stalks the village. All the while, Vasya's stepmother grows ever harsher, and her determination to groom her rebellious stepdaughter for either marriage or confinement in a convent. As danger circles, Vasya must defy even the people she loves and call on dangerous gifts she has long concealed. This in order to protect her family from a threat that seems to have stepped from her nurse's most frightening tales. I feel like this is crooked, but I'm doing my best, man. I'm like really doing my best. I'm struggling. Yeah, this is a debut. It's very well written. I bought the second book in this trilogy because I just know that this is something that I'm going to want to have around in my, like, as my personal collection, my personal library. I don't really have a library, not yet. Probably 25 pages in. This is going to be a new favorite. It's not too purple prosy, I don't think. I think it's just the language that's used. It's really great imagery. This is a great wintertime read. It's set in Russia, primarily in the wintertime, and so you get a lot of great imagery of snow. It's a lot of snow, but it doesn't feel uninviting, the snow imagery, especially because the family in this, I think, is, I love the family, I love the characters. It's a strong theme of family, and I just love how they have each other's back. I thought that Vasya, the protagonist, is an excellent protagonist. Just there's a lot of, you know, it's set in like medieval Russia. There's a lot of misogyny that the women in general have to deal with, and Vasya as a character has to deal with. She is the wild one. She's the one that can't be tamed. She's defying kind of like what the expectations are for women at this time. This is an adult fantasy, even though the protagonist starts off not even born yet. When the book starts, she's not born yet, but it's like this kind of, you're like meeting her family, and you're also getting to know her as a character. It's kind of like giving you the backstory. I hear there's more action in the second and third, but it's all very, very necessary. I enjoyed every minute of this. Obviously, you know, we all like different things, and I like this. Not everybody's gonna love it, but I enjoyed the folktale aspect of it. It feels very much like a fairy tale. So I'm just gonna give you an idea of some of the I highlighted some of the imagery. They rode into the city in the midst of the brief burning sunset, with the towers of church and palace silhouetted against a violet sky. Dandelions shone like stars amid the deep green. The horses threw long shadows, and the sickle moon stood alone in the sky. The blinding afternoon sunlight gave way to honey gold, and at last to amber and rust. Also, I think what I've learned, because I took a creative writing class last semester, and what I learned from a lecture, and what I think should be focused on, I mean, not too much, but basically like in writing, when writers use kind of weird descriptions, but in a good way, not in a bad way, obviously. But here's an example. So the sun was a live thing, throwing its hot arms over their necks. You know, you got a bit of personification there, but I just like, that's a strange kind of like the sun throwing its hot arms over their necks. Like, it's different. It's not a description that you see a lot, that you come across a lot in books, because, you know, when I'm reading, you get some of the same lines, like armed to the teeth, let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, you know. So when you see stuff like that over and over again, it's nice to see when people do things that are different, but it also works as imagery. You can imagine like how hot it actually feels. I'm recording this in increments, so I'm like stopping, starting, and I'm kind of forgetting what I'm saying. But I really enjoyed this book. I think that this book is really well written, but just because a book is well written, it doesn't mean that it's good. There are books that are not well written, but they're fun. They're a fun time. I think that this book happens to be a fun time and well written. It's kind of how I felt about The Golden Compass. This actually is sort of similar to The Golden Compass in a way. I thought The Golden Compass was well written and also a fun time. They also both have very strong young female protagonists. The Bear and the Nightingale, it does kind of have a slow start. You're basically learning about Vasya and why she is the way she is. You're learning about the world, the politics, the beliefs of the people. There's quite a few characters, so there's development of them as well. This book, it also there's a third person omniscient narrator, but there's something called free indirect discourse, which is basically, negatively we would refer to that as head hopping, but when it's done correctly and when it's done right, I would say that it's more free indirect discourse, where you're basically getting the inner thoughts of characters. They don't necessarily verbalize it, but you're getting inner thoughts of a whole bunch of characters, even though you might have a central character. So Vasya is our main protagonist, but we might get a thought thrown into the narration from somebody like her brother or her father. So like I said, this book is set in medieval Russia, and so there is quite a bit of misogyny. Anna is the one who becomes the stepmother to Vasya, and her character, I dislike her so much. So even if I dislike Anna, still had empathized with her, I sympathized with her. She basically has to go along with what her father says. She has to get married to Peter, and Peter, he has sex with Anna when she doesn't want it. From her perspective, it's said to be gentle. He's not aggressive with her, but she doesn't want it. She's not consenting to it, and so that is marital rape. It is implied and not explicitly shown, but that is essentially a theme of the book. Basically, whether they're magical men or not, women are at the mercy of men. I do think the slowness of this book has to do with a lot of it taking place in a rural village of Russia, and I think with Vasya, going to Moscow in the second book. I wonder if it'll kind of feel busier. Like, I think it's just a part of the atmosphere and the aesthetic of the book that it is a little slower. I still thought it was really entertaining and great to read, so highly recommend. Now I'm gonna stop talking about this book finally and move on to another book. So the next book I want to talk about is I guess Sense and Sensibility. Yeah, so I'm taking a British authors class for in school, and this one, it focuses on Jane Austen, and I was so excited to get into this class because this is like a hard class to get into apparently. And you know, because Jane Austen is that bitch and people love her for good reason. Sense and Sensibility, I've started annotating. I just want to let everybody know this is a beautiful book. I have not written inside of it. I've written in some of my books, but not this one. Okay, so I have so many tabs obviously because I'm reading this for school, but I'm also planning on doing a plot breakdown. I've already started writing the script. I'm doing a plot breakdown for Sense and Sensibility. I thought it would be a lot of fun to kind of take the plot but kind of summarize it in my modern speech. But because Jane Austen's books, like the characters and what happens, even though the language and some of the customs and stuff are not what we're used to anymore, it's really like it's funny and it feels so like, again, despite I'm not a woman of the gentry, I'm not a woman in the early 19th century, I'm not trying to secure a husband who's of a certain fortune. I mean, not really, kind of. I wouldn't mind it. Very different from the people in this book and in most of her books, but I can still relate to them so much. I really liked Eleanor. Actually, let me do the synopsis. I'm trying to be better at talking about books. I'm not great, but I'm trying to be better. Eleanor Dashwood's cool reason and her sister Marian's more demonstrative nature are revealed when their father Henry dies and they are uprooted from the family home. For Eleanor and Marian, salvation lies in making a suitable match, but both must overcome adversity. Eleanor strikes up an attachment with Edward Ferrars. I love how I've never actually pronounced that name out loud. Ferris, who harbors a secret that constrains his commitment, while Marian falls for a penniless charmer who throws her over for a rich heiress. Eleanor is our central character. Eleanor is the sense of this novel. Marian is the sensibility. There's a lot of characters who are emotional and sensitive. Marian is a drama queen and I kind of love her. She's a little annoying, but I kind of love her. But Eleanor is a really great character. I think that Jane Austen, she, you know, the women of her novels, they have to conform to the standards of society, of their rigid society. However, I do think that her female leads are so strong in their own way. They're so intelligent. Compared to other classic novels and novels that came out during this time, I think that there's a readability to Jane Austen's work. The language, again, is obviously different from what most of the time we're used to reading with modern fiction, contemporary fiction, but I'm studying English, but there's some things that I read that I'm like, what am I reading? But with her books, I can understand and follow along. This book genuinely, it made me laugh. This is my first Jane Austen read, and truly she was, I mean, her words live on, but she was so witty and so smart, and the plot is really good. I've read some novels from like the 18th century. It took a lot of time to get to what we have today. The beginnings of the novel were not always the most entertaining. People didn't really seem to understand plot a lot of the time. Like, I read The Castle of Otranto for a Gothic Lit class, and that was not the greatest. Like, I would give it a solid 3 stars. I think it's worth reading if you want to get into Gothic fiction because it's the start of Gothic fiction, but you know, it's not like great. It's not amazing. Jane Austen really, like I said, she really do be that bitch. I'm reading Pride and Prejudice now. I'm reading this now. I have to finish it by tomorrow. I'm halfway. Like, I'm not worried about finishing it. I don't think I'm gonna finish it at the end of January. I think I'm probably gonna finish it February 1st, so I'll probably count this in my February reads, my February wrap up. I have watched several Jane Austen adaptations, and my dog is right here begging for my attention, so that's what I'm doing. But I've watched several Jane Austen adaptations. I've watched the Pride and Prejudice movie, the BBC series, I've seen Emma, I watched Sense and Sensibility, the movie, after reading the book, and I watched the BBC series. I love the adaptations. I saw Clueless. I love the adaptations, but you know, I didn't have a chance to read the books, and I respected what Austen, from her work, what we've gotten in terms of media, visual media, but I really, really enjoy her writing and would recommend to read at least one of her books once, and to try and understand why people love her so much and why she has stood the test of time. So the next book I'm going to talk about is this one. This was my other reread. So Marian Hayes, the Duchess of Clare, just shot her husband. Of course, the evil, murderous man deserved what was coming to him, but now she must flee to the countryside. Unfortunately, the person she can ask for help is the charismatic criminal who is blackmailing her, and who she may have left tied up a few hours before. Highwayman, con artist, and all-around cheerful villain, Rob Brooks is no stranger to the wrong side of the law or the right side of anybody's bed. He never meant to fall for the woman whose secrets he promised to keep for the low price of £500, but how could he resist someone who led him on a merry chase all over London, left him tied up in a seedy inn, and then arrived covered in her husband's blood and in desperate need of his help? As they flee across the country, stopping to pick pockets, drink to excess, and rescue invalid cats, they discover more true joy and peace than either has felt in ages. But when the truth of Rob's past catches up to him, they must decide if they are willing to reshape their lives in order to forge a future together. When I first read this book, I was reading other things at the time. I was reading like Frankenstein, Dracula, classics of the classics. I don't know. I enjoyed it a lot. It wasn't super impactful for me. I recently watched a video from a booktuber that I really respect, Reads with Rachel. She talked about this book and how much she loved it, and I was like, oh, that was like the one book I've read that she talked about, and I was like, you know, I'm gonna reread it because she just sang it such high praises, and I remember the really good parts of it. I remember it being funny. And so I was like, I'm just gonna give it another go. I think I, didn't appreciate it as well as I should have. And on the second reread, I've tabbed it, as you can see. I really, really enjoyed it. So Marian Hayes is seemingly the main protagonist, but in actuality, it's dual POV. And so you get, you're like right in the way, booty is right in the way. We have Rob's POV and Marian's POV. So really they're both the main characters. And also, if you didn't get it, Robin Hood and Maid Marian, it's a, okay, no. What am I saying? So it's a like Robin Hood and Maid Marian kind of like retelling. And so, because of that though, you would think like there's a lot of crime, and it's literally called The Perfect Crimes of Marian Hayes, but I put tabs where they actually commit crimes. So it's the red tab. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a murder, there's thievery. What's the verb? Stealing. So there's crime. It's just not like, if you're expecting to read this and getting like a lot of action, like sword fights, guns going off, there is that, but it's not a lot. It's mostly focuses on the relationship. It mostly focuses on the relationship between Rob and Marian, which is a very nice, lovely, wonderful relationship between two bisexuals. And I think that's what really deserves appreciation from this book. Rob and Marian, they're both bisexual. Also, it's hinted at that Marian has experienced marital rape. And also she has a fear of getting pregnant. Back then, this is set in Georgian, like 18th century England. So back then, to not get pregnant, you didn't have sex. And she cannot get pregnant for medical reasons, like she could possibly die from having a baby. She already has one baby, and if she has a baby again, it could be the end of her. And so this is spicy, there's some spicy scenes, but when there is sex, it is non-penetrative sex, which I think is very interesting. It's very well done. I think it's different because, you know, in a lot of romances, the having P and V sex is like the end all be all. It's, you know, every time writers, not every time, but a lot of the time when writers write about it, it's like stars exploding, space forms and reforms and all this stuff. It goes to show that P and V sex is not the goal of sex, because obviously other different people have sex and it's not always P and V. Marian is sort of a little rough around the edges. She's sort of harsh, I guess. And Rob is he's a cinnamon roll. Love him. I love Rob. I don't dislike Marian, but as I was reading, I started to realize that I think that I'm jealous. I'm jealous of Marian because I love Rob so much. And because I was like reading this, I was like, why don't I really like Marian that much? Because I'm jealous of her, because I wish I was her. So I put green, tabbed where I got jealous. I got jealous 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times because I just love Rob so much. I think he's a great character. The relationship is really what's the main focus. Mostly what they're doing in this book is like traveling. It's not like swashbuckling. It's a romance. It is mainly focused on the romance. This is also the second book. In the first book focuses on 2 characters who appear briefly in this, which I need to read. I plan on reading. The next book that I'm going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about it super in depth. I've read 5 books in January. I've only talked about 4 so far. But I'm going to talk about it in comparison to this book. I read Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. It is like a collection of short stories. It is a part of the Throne of Glass series, and so it tells the prior to Throne of Glass, which focuses on Selena, Sardothian. It's everything. There's a lot of references to things in Throne of Glass, and so this tells those stories. With Sarah J. Maas, it's fine. It's just fine. I don't have the connection that some people have to her stories and her characters, and that's fine. But I bring up Assassin's Blade to specifically relate a certain part of it to this book. So this is spoilers. I've really tried to be careful about spoilers in this video, but now I'm gonna get into spoilers for Assassin's Blade and like Throne of Glass series, although you do learn this. I don't know if this is like it's not like a major spoiler. It's a very small spoiler. Is it really? It's not a crazy spoiler. Selena is an assassin, and when it's like an assassin's guild, and while she's there, one of her one of her peers, his name is Sam, and they're friends. Well, they're kind of like enemies, they're friends, and they end up becoming lovers. They move in with each other, and this does not make the leader of the Assassin's Guild very happy. And he has, did I mention his name is Sam? I think I did. I think I did. But he has Sam killed. And so this is a big part of Selena's backstory. But so Selena and Sam, when they leave the Assassin's Keep, which is where all the assassins live, they move into an apartment together. I remember seeing this comment, I don't know where I saw it, but Sarah J. Maas does not like to write virgins like having their first time. But the concept of having sex for the first time and virginity does come up in her books, and it is treated interestingly, especially in Assassin's Blade. There is Lysandra, she's a courtesan, and Selena's jealous of her because she flirts with Sam a lot. The nature of Lysandra's position is that she has to be a virgin until her first bidding, and then, you know, people bid on her, they get her, I guess, and then she's not a virgin anymore. I'm like, how are they checking that she's not a virgin? Because if you're going by like the hymen being broken, that's like a very old fashioned way of thinking, because, you know, hymens can break doing a lot of things, not just from sex. So, you know what I mean? Like, another thing is that Sam and Selena, they never had sex. And before I get into that, I just want to say that it's okay to wait to have sex for whatever reason. People have their own reasons for why they might decide to wait with a partner, and that's fine. This is a novella, and this is also technically still YA. I'm not like asking for smut. I'm not saying that they needed to have sex or for it to be on the page. Like, before I say this is all prefacing. I'm prefacing what I'm about to say. But so twice in the novella, when referring to the topic of Sam and Selena having sex, why am I still holding this? The narrator basically says that them having sex would be like this monumental thing. So in chapter 7 of the novella, the narration goes, there's different sections, so it's chapter 7 of a certain section that I can't remember, but so the narration goes, so much had changed so quickly. Something that monumental, referring to sex, could wait a while longer. I'm not entirely sure the order of this, like this is pre Throne of Glass, but I don't know when this was written. Selena has not done anything with a guy in Throne of Glass up until a certain point of the series, and I wonder if Assassin's Blade was written while Throne of Glass had already was coming out. I wonder if it was a way to try and explain like her and Sam not having done anything, if it was to try and explain why that was. But I'm reading off of my notes, so I just feel like sex in our culture, our Western American mindset, I feel like it's treated so strangely. Having sex for the first time can be a lot. You're putting yourself in a vulnerable position with another person, but I do feel like we in our culture treat virginity like it's so important, it's so special, and that somehow losing your virginity fundamentally changes you as a person. And like even that terminology, like losing, that's not used in the novella, but you know, that's like how we think of it, like you're losing something, like you're giving something up. And typically it's used, that kind of language is used regarding women. It's kind of the mindset behind like purity culture, which I don't think that Sarah J. Maas prescribes to. What I was saying, if SJM wanted to have a character that was gonna wait to have sex, I think that would have been great for Rhysand, because he was a victim of sexual abuse, and that would have been an interesting thing to explore with, in particular, a male character. But so in chapter 2 of the Assassin and the Empire, things get hot and heavy between Selena and Sam, and the narration says that they'd gone further than that. So Sam, he took off his shirt and he was unbuttoning Selena's shirt, and I'm like, how much farther have they gone than that? So like basically they've done everything pretty much. So that line and that from Assassin's Blade is why I bring it up in comparison to this book, because if they've done so much and then stopped up until a certain point, the highlight of sex should not be, of the concept of sex in general, the highlight, like it shouldn't be like considered just like P&V. Anyway, that's it for me. This video has been a complete mess. My camera's about to die. I'm sure my angle has changed a lot. I'm so sorry. But if you watched this whole entire video, thank you so much. Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. And that's it, I guess. Goodbye.